Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Keep the Line Moving, the podcast designed to talk about leadership, life, and inspiration. I am your host, Chris Gargano, and for episode 42, our topic is preparation. Doing the work required to be prepared for life's biggest moments, small moments and every moment in between. And our guest, Brandon Geyer, shares these universal principles with his students each and every day as part of his company, Major League Mindset. Brandon runs a company working with baseball players from youth to high school to college to the pros, talking about these principles: discipline, a growth mindset, energy, setting routines, adversity, and everything in between associated with baseball and life. Brandon Geyer was drafted by the Chicago Cubs in 2007. He then played 7 years in the major leagues for both Tampa and Cleveland. In fact, Cleveland played the Cubs in the 2016 World Series. Brandon will dissect a singular at-bat that he had in Game 7 against Aroldis Chapman. What was going through his mind? He will share that with us. He will also talk about his job as mental strength coach with the Los Angeles Angels. He also does that work for his alma mater, the University of Virginia. Fascinating conversation, and it begins now with Brandon Geyer. All right, Brandon, this is a great time of year. The baseball playoffs, the World Series, we are right in the thick of it. When you're watching the playoffs and the World Series ultimately, what goes through your head? I've been waiting to ask you this question since you and I firmed up this date, and it's great to see you, and I need to know what goes through your head, please.
Yeah, no, great to see you, Chris. Thanks for having me on. What goes through my head? Maybe how close we were to winning it all back in 2016. Anytime I see the playoffs, maybe a little part of that just comes up. But what comes up for me is just like the atmosphere. Like it's hard to really tell on TV, but when you are in person in these atmospheres in the playoffs, like it is just electric. And that's what I think of. I just kind of bring myself back to being at Wrigley Field or, at home with the Indians. And it was just the atmosphere, it gives me kind of goosebumps right now, just thinking about it. So I get to that. And then I get to thinking of, man, every play matters. Every pitch matters. And just seeing these players who are already at a very high level take up their focus, take up their intention, even more so every single pitch, knowing that could decide the game, which could decide the series. So that's a little bit of what I think about.
Game 7, 2016 World Series, Cleveland, Chicago. You're up against Aroldis Chapman. Runner on. Take us through what happened.
Yes. So, I always like to say it started before that at bat. It started way before I got in the box. It started the moment we learned we were playing the Chicago Cubs. I knew as a platoon hitter, righty hitter who faces a lot of lefty pitchers, I was going to get big opportunities against Aroldis Chapman, and I never faced him before. So once we found out we were playing them, I started getting those visual reps. Like you can watch a lot of video, but those reps mentally rehearsing every single pitch, every single situation you could ever think of. I was going through that in my head. So then when I got up, and I didn't know what the situation would be, when I got up in that moment, I wanted it to feel like I'd been there before. I wanted to be able to tell myself, Brandon, you should have 100% trust because you did everything you could mentally and physically to prepare yourself for this situation. And because of that, you should have zero regrets and not worry at all about the outcome because you took care of the process. And me doing that before the game, the visualization, me on deck when I noticed the high arousal in my body, the nerves and the anxiety, training over time to say, thank you, body. You're giving me energy to perform, not think, oh my God, why am I nervous? This isn't good. Like I used to think. So on deck, basically using my breath, acting like I was in the box, just kept saying, bring it on, bring it on. I want this moment. I want this moment. Walking to the plate, basically, what am I saying in my head? Bring it on, Chapman. This is what I trained for. Let's go. And I was able to go up with this full trust and confidence in myself because I had this win or learn mindset where I did everything I could. There's so much out of my control. I can just go up there free and loose, knowing I'm doing everything I need to put myself in the best position. Then I like to thank Dio Valente. Dio Valente means God willing. God willing, everything works out, but who knows what's going to happen. I did my part, and then got down 0-2. Cool. Been there before in my head. Do my same pre-pitch routine with my deep breath while looking at a focal point on the bat. Get back in, remind myself of my mental cues slow and early, and then my final approach, line drive right center field. Work it back to 3-2 count. And then fortunate, I hit a line drive double into right center field. And one thing I always like to say is the next batter, Rajay Davis, tied it up. And that's not something I visualized. And I actually almost passed out when I saw the ball go hit the camera. And when it was a home run, because I didn't think he hit it high enough. I saw it went out and I was like, oh my gosh, we're about to win the World Series. So that's kind of like a little snapshot of what got me into a great position to succeed against Chapman right there.
Okay. So you play collegiately at Virginia. You get drafted by the Cubs, coincidentally. You play for the Rays and the Guardians eventually. So that's your baseball lineage at the highest level, right? You grew up and you were a standout. You played football. But let's look at this. That is incredibly advanced for a young man, right? You're still a young man compared to me. But that's incredibly advanced to have that whole process down as you're on deck, approaching a guy who, not just another guy, a guy who throws 100 and who's still playing today. How did you arrive to that advanced state of mental preparedness? And obviously the physical tools are there as well. How did you get there?
Well, it was a long-term process. Building mental muscle, just like physical muscle, it takes time, it takes effort. But I like to say you work on the inside, it shows on the outside. It took a long time. And it all started with this book right here, Heads Up Baseball. Came out in the late 90s, written by Dr. Ken Ravizza and Tom Hansen. So my first 3 years, I know you said a second ago I was a standout. My first 3 years in high school, at Herndon High School in Northern Virginia, I was not. I was very average to below average baseball player. Football player, I was doing good and thought I was going to play football in college. And after my junior year of baseball, a coach recommended that book because I was not doing good. No colleges have talked to me, no scholarships, and more so than anything, just limiting myself, my emotions, my focus, my self-talk, my body language, my victim kind of mindset, holding myself back more than anything. So I read this book, didn't just read it, but took all of the knowledge and just applied it as much as I could. Had a great summer and then went off my senior year. And then that's when I could have, it went to the point where I had no scholarships to where I almost could have picked wherever I wanted to go to play baseball. I was given this key that truly unlocked all of the physical talent that was laying dormant inside of me. So I ended up going to the University of Virginia and just continued to work at it because it's not like riding a bike. It's not something you train your mindset. You know, whether this is for skills, on or off the field, this is a continual process, looking just to get marginally better every single day in some way, knowing if you stop training it, it'll go away slowly but surely. It atrophies just like our physical body. Our mindset does the same. So to answer your question, it was just continuing to work at it, continuing to have to go through massive amounts of adversity, but now approaching that as much as I could, knowing it was my partner in growth. It wasn't something I needed to avoid. It's something that really helped me. So I just kind of smiled and said, bring it on. Obstacles make me stronger. And that's what got me to that moment right there. And then when I retired in 2020, I was all in on the next chapter of my life. We're taking everything I learned and went through and now giving it back to individuals on and off the field to help them through their inevitable hero's journey that they're on.
I love that. Before we get to what you're doing now, I'm incredibly curious. And plus I love the game of baseball. I could not love it more. I have since the minute I was born, just for context there. So we share that in common. Let me ask you this, and this is something I like to ask people. Do you feel as we sit here today in 2023 that you got the most out of your baseball talent, the God-given talent, the work that you did, the mental work that you did, and let's be honest, the emotional work that you did, all that coupled together from reading that book, that seems to be the catalyst. But do you, as you sit here today, do you feel you got the most out of it, or could you have kept playing?
What a question. 100% I do. A lot of players, you know, I get across to them throughout our life, on the field and off the field, and especially at the end of our life, when we're on our deathbed, we're going to have one of two pains, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. The pain of discipline weighs ounces. The pain of regret weighs tons. I wish I could cite who I read that from a long time ago, but that always stuck with me. And I bring that up because I prided myself and I knew the biggest separator of those who not get to the big leagues, those who make the most of their potential are the ones who are very disciplined. It all comes down to discipline, specifically structural, reactive, and expansive discipline, which we can talk about later. But I think because of all of the discipline, I can lay asleep at night knowing I did everything I could mentally and physically and emotionally, like you said, to soak up every ounce of potential I had. Now, my goal was to play at least 10 years in the big leagues because that's a select fraternity. I only played 7 years, but I can sleep well at night knowing I did everything I could. And, that potential that was lying dormant inside of me those first 3 years in high school, I got to all of that. And hey, like I said, Dio Valente, what did that mean for me? 7 years in the big leagues. Great. I did all I could. Hopefully that answers your question.
It does. And it was very heartfelt. And I truly appreciate that, the way you dove into that question and the regret, and we don't want to have that. We want to give it everything we got. We got to empty that tank.
Yeah.
So Brandon, at the catalyst moment in high school, after you read the book, there's the before and the after, right? You didn't play so well in your freshman, sophomore, and junior years. What did taking fly balls look like? What was a session in batting practice? What did it look like before you read the book, the catalyst moment happens? Then what did it translate? How did it translate on the field to make you have all those scholarship offers in addition to Virginia, where you went eventually? But what was the difference of you on the baseball field?
Wow, great question. I would say the biggest thing, everything slowed down. The game and my mind slowed down using specific tools such as the breath, such as taking control of my self-talk, such as being in the present moment, such as carrying myself with big, powerful body language, no matter the results, such as acting like a warrior rather than acting like a victim when things didn't go my way, being ruthless with controlling the controllables and letting go of everything else that I couldn't control. All that led to it slowing down, and all of that led to me more and more consistently, not all the time, but more and more consistently playing free and loose. And when ball players, when any athlete, I guess when we go through life, we have this freeness and looseness to us. We are going to have better outcomes. Not that we want to be attached to the outcomes, but those come our way as a byproduct of that. So I was actually a third baseman in high school. And to kind of talk about the mental game in a little bit more depth, I got recruited as a third baseman to go to University of Virginia. Ryan Zimmerman was there when I got there. And they actually tried an experiment my first year where I played third, he played shortstop. But what happened? I thought heading into Virginia, I had trained my mindset. I was pretty much good to go. I thought it was like riding a bike, like I mentioned earlier, but it wasn't. So I got to Virginia and I had to go through struggles, and I would, make an error, and then I would get that bad self-talk. I hope the next ball's not hit to me. And I couldn't cut it at third base. So that's when they moved me to the outfield, and I played outfield for good the rest of my career. And I only bring that up, Chris, because although I had trained it and got these massive benefits my senior year of high school, I didn't stay as committed with it my first year at University of Virginia. And then what happened? It went away and I struggled. So I had to recommit to being all in with the mental side of the game and obviously continue to get after it on the physical side. So it just goes to show this stuff, it's going to go away if we don't train it just like our physical skills. But I think, the biggest thing is everything slowed down and I played free and loose more consistently.
So you retire in 2020. How soon after did you establish what you wanted to do to give back to the game and develop Major League Mindset? That is your company now. And I want you to talk about that. So you retire in 2020. Was it instantaneous? Had you been planning to launch the business?
Yeah, what a process it was. I was literally meditating the other day, just bringing about this gratitude of where Major League Mindset, where it's come right now, because it was just like all of our journeys we're on when we're going for something big. It's a lot of ups and downs. I like to call it the furnace of adversity, kind of like my career was and Major League Mindset is, or it has been. But to answer your question, when I retired in 2020, I already pretty much knew. I was in spring training with the Giants, and that was when COVID hit, and they sent everyone home from spring training in 2020. And I already knew if I didn't make the team that year in spring training, I was going to pivot and do this because this is what I have been obsessed with for decades now. And I wanted to take everything I learned and poured my heart into, and the wisdom, the experience, and the platform I was given to now create a system that I call Major League Mindset and give back to players of all ages, and not just players, but individuals as well, because it all translates. So I started in 2020. Actually, the name of the company was Fully Equipped Athlete. And about a year and a half later, I was meditating one day and Major League Mindset just stood out to me. I was like, it's time to change to Major League Mindset. And I just continued to dive deep, not just relying on my personal experience playing, not just relying on the mentors and the mental performance coaches I had. And speaking of that book, Heads Up Baseball, Dr. Ken Ravizza, who wrote this, who's known as like the mental performance GOAT when it comes to baseball. Well, 7 years later, I read that in 2004. 7 years later, he was a sports psychologist, the head guy for the Tampa Bay Rays when I was there. So I then got to work with him in person for 3 years, maybe 4 years. And I remember saying to him, Ken, you changed the trajectory of my life with your book. So thank you. And he actually in 2016 wrote the volume 2 version of that, Heads Up Baseball. And in 16, he followed Joe Madden to the Cubs, and he ended up beating me in the World Series. Funny how it comes full circle.
Sure.
So let me get back to where I'm going. So I didn't want to just rely on what he gave me, what I experienced. So I just dove deep, got certifications. I wanted to create this system where there's nothing else out there like it, like taking my experience playing and everything else. So that's where I created this and Major League Mindset. And I am pretty much just 100% all in with this. This is what I love to do. I mean, I have 3 kids, a wife, very, very blessed. But when it comes to this, I am as disciplined and all in as I was during my career. And I just know that with what I'm doing now, I'm going to make much more of an impact. I hope I made an impact when I was playing, but I just know that this is how I can make way more of an impact on players' lives on and off the field, and just super grateful for where it's at right now.
So obviously I follow you on social media. I think you do a heck of a job. And you know what? I love what you just said right there. And I love the mission behind Major League Mindset, which is to be all in, Brandon. That's the key. Every single one of your posts are all in. I can tell that you've prepared, that you believe what you're saying, and you're doing it to give, right, to the young athletes. But as you and I talked before coming on today, your premise and the things you write about, gratitude and discipline and diet and everything, is applicable to so many different people in so many different walks of life. However, let's get to the core. Describe the core of your business and who is the target audience to benefit from Major League Mindset.
Yeah. So Chris, like you said, I'm a mental strength coach with the Angels, with the University of Virginia, and a couple other colleges. Do some one-on-one sessions, but the main thing that I do, it's called 8-week live online training with me, where it's just a big group every Thursday night. So there's been 6 classes. Each class is 8 weeks long. Then class 7 starts on December 14th. And so once that starts for 8 weeks, we meet live every Thursday, and everyone's given this app where they create these new habits and routines of excellence where I can message them and hold them accountable. But that is the absolute biggest thing I do. That's where I can make the most impact. And although it's a group setting, it's very individualized, if that makes sense, where, they can always reach out and talk to me about anything that we're going through, anything that they're going through on or off the field. When I say they, I talk about players of all ages, literally players. The youngest was 8, and actually 8 is my oldest, is my daughter at age. And I wouldn't recommend that young, but it's usually 10 through big leaguers that take part. It's parents, it's coaches, it's even non-athletes that take part in this. And why is that? Because like you said, whether it's discipline, whether it's sleep, whether it's nutrition, whether it's having this attitude of gratitude, everything we talk about directly translates to all facets of life, school, relationships. And really, I'm just trying to help these individuals become the best version of themselves. Because the thing is, Chris, as you know, the same skills and tools and character and mindset of athlete or not those off the field are going to help anyone perform at their best on the field. And, on the field can be different for everybody, whatever it is for them. So a little quick snapshot of that, the biggest part of my program, that 8-week live online training.
So you mentioned, and that's fascinating, and we'll put some more information in the show notes for everybody. But you mentioned your job with the Angels and the University of Virginia. Can you take us through what that looks like? Because I'm sure that's very fascinating to our listeners. You're the mental strength coach. What does that mean? Tell folks, please.
With the Angels, it was back before spring training this last season. Phil Nevin, the manager for the Angels, reached out. He saw what I had been doing, and they were looking to hire someone. So I was basically in person with the big league team with the Angels 6 to 8 days a month this year, and the rest of the time kind of virtual phone calls and Zooms and whatnot. And what that entails, really, when I think of mental strength, I just think of giving tools to, we're talking about the Angels now, but really anybody, tools that in any given moment, individuals can use them when they find that they're spiraling, they're getting knocked down by life or by athletics. Things are spiraling. I like to call it a gap, who you're capable of being and who you're actually being. When that gap is widening, you can be this, you have the potential to be this in any given moment, but you're really being this because of, habits or lifestyle or overall mindset. Give them tools that they have ready at hand, tools to close that gap. And that way, in the moment, they know they're showing up as that best version of themselves. And then there's no regret because you are doing everything you can in that moment to give yourself the best position or put yourself in the best position to succeed. So I didn't come in to any team, or I'm not working with any individual to make fear, to make anxiety, to make adversity, to make obstacles and challenges just magically disappear. Obviously, for all human beings, those are always going to come on and off throughout our lives. I feel like my main purpose is to help them eat all of that stuff up and not avoid it. Know it's part of the process. Know it doesn't mean something's wrong with them. Knows it's just life. So when that comes their way, okay, they have tools now to really use all of that as fuel. And when they get to the point where they can do that, what happens is their highs on and off the field are higher, and they still have lows, but those lows are higher. So higher highs and higher lows. And then something beautiful happens. Who they used to be at their best, their prior best, becomes their new baseline. And then they just continue to level up from there. So yeah, there is a best version of everybody, but the game doesn't stop there because there's another next best version that's waiting in the wings. Never perfectly, but more and more consistently trying to catch and show up and live like that best version of themselves. I would say that's really what I did with the Angels, Virginia, and all the players I work with.
Okay, so let's drill down on this because that's fascinating. And I can tell by visiting with you that you're a great listener and you process what the other person is saying because you have to work with them, right? Whether it's through Major League Mindset, like you said, Virginia, or the Angels. So my question is this. When you're working with a group, can you spot somebody who, let's say, like you, I don't know how you classify that person's they're playing at 65% of their potential, meaning the combination of, as we've said in this entire conversation, the emotional, the physical, and the mental ability, right? You're raveling in the whole package of the person.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell when something's bothering that person, however you phrase it, you diagnose, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have to spend a little bit more time with that third baseman, a little bit more time with that relief pitcher. I can tell of all these people in this group, they're outliers and they need me, per se.
Mm-hmm.
How do you determine that? Can you see it? Because I could tell that I keep using the word diagnosis. You're not a doctor, but you have to understand who your clientele, who the group is, correct?
Yes, 100%. And you can definitely tell that. Like if I were to just go to a random high school game around here and watch, I feel like pretty quickly you can understand, especially when adversity hits, such as how their body language is right away, such as if they're using their breath, if they look like they have a set routine during games to go to stop that spiral and spiral back up and slow everything down. That stuff you can definitely tell. And a lot of funny things happen when I work with athletes and they develop this mindset we're after. they always say, you know, Brandon, now that I know all this stuff, because it's when we're unaware of something, obviously we can't get better at it. But now they become aware of what was holding them back, and they've gotten to grips with it, and really, instead of limiting themselves, they become what it's pretty much limitless. Once they get to that mindset, then for their teammates and for other teams, they always say like, oh my God, Brandon, I notice like that used to be me, but now I can see how he's carrying himself. I can see his focus is so scattered. He's so in the past, or he's obviously worried about the future. He's tight and tense up there. Like, this is stuff that used to be me, but now I can see it. So the fact that players who have come through notice it, now I definitely can when I am going to games, but it's a tricky thing because especially at the big league level, although you notice it, not just go up to them and be like, hey, you're doing this, let's change this. It has to first, you build this trust and you build this relationship. And then once that happens, they tend to come to you looking for guidance. So at the big league level, it's a little different than the college and high school, where you kind of are, I don't want to say waiting, but you're just like, they come to you and you just kind of give them these tools that can help them in the moment.
Wow. Well said. All right. I know you've got players to coach and people to see, so I'm going to give you the all-star moments. This is one sentence or one word responses. Are you ready? I have a few questions for you. You ready?
Yeah, sure. Just quick answers, or
just
how do you want?
Answer. What comes right to your mind, Brandon?
Okay.
It's 100-mile-an-hour fastball. How will you react?
I like those.
Here we go, my friend. All-star moments. 1, how do you deal with adversity?
You approach it and you use it as fuel by literally saying a mantra: obstacles make me stronger.
Boom. 2, how do you give yourself fuel?
Good sleep, good nutrition, and a very healthy perspective.
What does never give up mean to you?
I think of grit. It means you're going to get knocked down, but it's how many times can you keep getting back up.
What is the value of collaboration?
Well, not one person can just know everything. So when you have multiple people together that are all in, like we talked about, great, excellent things happen.
What is the best quality a rookie can have?
Discipline.
Wow. Last one, my friend. Describe yourself as a leader in one sentence.
Living my best life to help others do the same, so I can inspire and empower them to show up at their best and create ripples so that others do the same.
Love it. And last one, a bonus. As we are taping this, there are 4 teams left in baseball: the Astros, the Rangers, the Phillies, and the Diamondbacks. Who's going to win the 2023 World Series?
I'm going to say the Philadelphia Phillies over the Texas Rangers.
All right. I don't know if I'll put that in, but that's great. Brandon, you're the best. This was tremendous. Thank you so much.
Dude, thank you, Chris. It was an honor. It was a pleasure. So thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
And we thank Brandon very much for being on the show. My number one takeaway is this. Did you hear the detail as he was describing his preparation for that one at bat in the World Series? Yes, it was Game 7. Yes, it was against Aroldis Chapman. But did you hear the mental checklist that he had, knowing that he went into that box ready to play, ready to deal with whatever was coming his way, which was a 100-mile-an-hour fastball, which he hit into the right center field gap for a run-scoring double? Use that metaphor, apply it to what we talk about every week with our guests on this podcast, which is you got to do the work. I don't mean to sound preachy, but that's what Brandon said. You got to do the work. You have to know to be disciplined. You have to know to have that growth mindset. You have to know to be mindful of your energy and what drains you. And you have to know how to deal with failure. And that's what baseball is, dealing with failure and overcoming and being the best version of yourself. I really enjoyed that conversation. I hope you did as well. We will have information in the show notes on Major League Mindset, Brandon's company. For our podcast producer, Jack Radutsky, I am Chris Gargano. We will see you next week, everybody, on Keep the Line Moving. Every week, you hear guests on this podcast talk about some of their biggest leadership challenges. As a leader, you want to make an impact on those you lead and reach your organization's goals. while also optimizing your time management. Wherever you are in your leadership journey, we could all use some help. This is what we focus on with our group and individual coaching services. To book a call or get more information, email me directly at chrisg@garganoleadership.com or visit our website at garganoleadership.com. For our podcast and video producer, Jack Radutsky, and our marketing coordinator, Savin Narwal, have a great week, everybody.